can just call it styrene if you'd like, among friends. So there's a lot of different sizes available and thicknesses, and there's all kinds of things you can do with it. And most typically you think of it for models. So I've got some models that are built by students, and you know, I'm not saying they're good or bad models, but they're the type of models you may have seen. And then there's a form of model building where you do what's called kit bashing, where you take different parts of models and put them together and customize them. And what styrene lets you do is make hard edge models. So you can make models with really well-refined edges. It also lets you make designs quickly. So we're kind of interested in both of those things today. So what I have here, and then actually you can pass that around. That's a almost real Ferrari. And then there's some other things too that I've got here as well. But this is an example of something that was used for a prototype in which it wasn't meant for aesthetic purposes or model building, but rather as a construction material. I've got a little article there about it as well. And this was a release mechanism for a parachute that flipped up. And so I've saved that, and you can see, and we'll do the heat bending here later. So I just want to pass that around too. So that one's kind of ugly, but it works. It does good things for us. And you can see the white piece on there is very thick. So you can get thicknesses. I guess the thickest I've dealt with, I think, is 2 millimeters. But certainly you can go down to 60 thousandths of an inch, so you can get all kinds of variety. So again, to kind of give you sort of taxonomy here, you've got model making for fun and for prototyping, for visual displays. And then you've got props and special effects and that sort of thing. You've got the other side where you just use as a material to make interesting things that require strength and sharp edges with good refinement. So this is an example. Well, let me pass this one. There's some thin polystyrene, and I think we're fortunate we'll have enough to do some different interesting projects here. And one of the biggest advantages is, I think I'm going to pass it around. One of the big advantages of polystyrene is paint effects. So you can do all kinds of neat things with paint, which we're not going to be able to do here. But, and quite frankly, I don't really have good examples. Those things have all been painted, but not only can you get really high quality paint work done, including clear coats that give depth and such, so you can do these beautiful automobiles are a good example. We have a lot of depth in the paint. And you can do speckle effects and all sorts of things. But also you can do weathering, and you can, there's a lot of tricks with paint we'll talk about later. I'm just going to pass this around. When we look at cosplay, we'll look at this. This is called Wonderflex, and this is sort of a cousin to styrene. It's a flexible material that you can heat, and it will form into sort of organic shape. So it's used a lot for body armor, helmets, that sort of thing. Polystyrene doesn't heat as well, or it doesn't deform as well as Wonderflex and those kinds of materials. When you heat styrene, it kind of goes wonky on you, or it can easily. So that's the basic issues. What I want to look at today was some scratch build techniques, largely. And the best thing here to do kind of quickly is to make stuff. I think a real boring thing to talk about is adhesives, but you can use super glue, CA glue on styrene. And it sets up quickly, but it's not as strong. So a lot of these solvent bonds are good. And if you're really in geek mode, you put it in a heavy beaker so it doesn't spill. And you may even smell, there's a citrus smell in this glue. You don't want to sniff this glue, but it smells very nice. It's not like the nasty stuff that you may have encountered before. So that's a good type of glue. There's also a 2-part plastic bond, like an epoxy, that's very, very strong. So those are kind of the adhesives you use. This, which we might look at another time when we deal with maybe cosplay, this is a kicker for CA glue. And you have super glue, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't need it right now, maybe we'll get it later, because it does really cool stuff. Yes, sir.
Have you ever looked into super glue and baking soda?
Yeah, that's to make a thickened form of super glue.
Yeah, like it turns into epoxy almost.
Yeah, and it's an accelerant as well, like this. But this is instantaneous, so yeah, like that makes it thickened form, so that's really handy. So you might look at that with cosplay. Now, these cost about $4 online, and I think you can only get them online. These kickers, there's different types, but they last. It's very good for working with wood and other materials too that don't bond really well, so it's a great investment for working with super glue. And then this is a bit eclectic. This is kind of the good bond joint. So if you're dealing with structural materials, you can, and I'll glue some of these up, but this is obviously a very thick type of polystyrene, and you can glue the edges up. It's really quite strong, but often you reinforce it. You can get structural shapes. I couldn't find mine. I have some like L-shaped pieces that you can cut very easily to strengthen pieces up like that, but I just use some scrap 2 millimeter there to give a good strong joint. So that's how you can make structural pieces. And then there's some, what I like is this contour putty. So if you're real fussy, like I am, like in that joint you would sand the edges really smooth using a block sander and a fine grit or an emery cloth even. And then you fill in any gaps with this. And it's interesting because you know how you always need that one extra ingredient to go from amateur level to pro level? This is one of them. It's a sandable epoxy that will fill in gaps in styrene. So especially if you're doing kit bash or doing custom work, not so much with building model kits, that's really helpful. So you can fill it up. It's like a spackle for us. It's easy to sample and paint school. So again, styrene is good. It's especially good when you want to deal with flat surfaces and you want dramatic paint effects. So a couple classes ago we went over foam core. We made some foam core things, including you made the airplane, right? The Delta wings.
Yeah.
Okay. And we made a wing section and so on. So that's really good for making light, flat panels, but you can't paint it with as much variety as you can with styrene. So you see there's black styrene available. I've only used white and black. And just to pass things around, this is not a good example of a paint strip, but I actually had this one. When you deal with paint effects, often you just want to experiment. So this is a bunch of experiments using different bases and both enamel and acrylic bases. And I also have one I didn't bring with me where I tried doing a primer, like several layers of primer, a base coat, a clear coat. And what I did, because I'm kind of a geek this way, is you know how you always hear you should put a primer down, then base coat, and I actually didn't bring this with me. I can get it online. There's a whole process by which you sand between each coat and you build it up. I was curious as to what it actually looked like. You know, that's what you hear. That's the textbook stuff. Do it this way, or it's a failure. And I was kind of intrigued. I didn't find a big difference between using a primer and not using a primer, quite frankly. But with painting this, the tradition, I can make this available. Put it on. We can even put it on the website or the portal. You know, typically, you wash it with soap and water, get the surface, the skin oils off, and then you hit it with a primer, and you use a good quality primer, and then you put, you sand between each coat, put 2 coats on it, then you put your base coats. And this I do think helps is to use 3 sprays for the base coat. Because you don't want heavy coverage, so you try to give it a spritz once, and I say you should really cover by the 3rd time or more. So you give it, because you don't want it to pool in recesses. So 2 light hits should get almost the entire coverage, then 1 more to get the whole thing. But some people get very religious about how to paint, and in my little testing, I didn't find it made that much of a difference, because I think a lot of the colored paints do well without primer. It just seems to be the way they are. That's my experience. But there's many brands and people get into that quite a bit. And then one of the things that's really fun is Rub and Buff. In fact, has anybody used Rub and Buff?
Yeah.
It's going to have a cult following, isn't it?
They actually stopped making some of my favorite colors.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully we can use this today, because if you go in my studio, everything looks weathered, because I just went crazy and I did that. In fact, who knows, we will do that here if Jeremiah's not watching. Make everything look 100 years old. So this is Rub and Buff. Pass it on. It's not too exciting to look at on its own, but that does this beautiful weathering effect that I really like. So
Any material?
it worked well, yeah, pretty much any material. I don't think porous materials. I've never used it on wood and things like that, or I've never used it on ceramic. So mainly
Ceramics,
metal,
it works great.
plastic. Okay.
Sealed wood, it works great.
Okay, it does. Well, all right, good. So we have experience there. I've never tried that. What colors have you used with wood?
I just like the gold and the whites, the antique
Okay.
whites and things like that. But ceramics, I've used the whole range of colors.
Okay. Well, good. And we small enough, we should be able to do it. I brought this in. These are runners and pieces from an old model. And this is part of kit bashing. So one of the advantages of working with styrene is there's a large inventory of old models. You can get them cheaply at Ollie's or online or some other place. And you can use them with these panels. And there's a really joyous delight when you hit all the stuff with a primer and you make it one color, because you get this kind of weird contortions of different colors. So, which we're not going to do today, but anyway, that's just some examples of models. And if you're a devotee of model making, you look at the quality of the injections, because if you look at little details, you'll see different manufacturers do a better job than others, and they do wear with age. So, okay. And then I want to go over cutting, and I'll just these we'll be able to do today. This, like for me to make this blank, and you can sharpen this to a dangerous point. This took, I don't know, 20 seconds. I mean, it's very fast. And I made a lot of these out of one sheet. So we should be able to do that today. You can go home with that. I meant to bring some more wood. Like the handles you can make, for example, for knives, you can make, I did not sharpen those, but they'll take edges really good. It's a kind of a scary thing, I guess. You know, you can finish up handles. You can glue them on with a two-part epoxy or with a urethane type adhesive, works well. It's really nice if you drill and put brass, I put brass rods through because they sand easily. So, and one of the things we do, because I teach a model building class, VIX 130, put in a little plug for that. But one of the things we do really quickly is we build a knife and we cut these with scissors, which, and it's real fast. We glue the edges together. We put some tape in here, and then we make a handle. This is with Super Sculpey, which maybe we'll talk about with cosplay on later. And stick it in there and glue it, and you've got a little weird knife. So that's one thing we can do very quickly. And this approach lets you do a lot of things. You can make the blade as thick or as thin as you want. It gives you a lot of variety. And you can literally cut it with scissors. So it's a piece. Okay. So let me just go over a couple cutting techniques. It's very easy to cut styrene. And I mean, there's the best way to do it is with a styrene cutter, which is like they're basically like paper cutters. And there's some handheld ones too. I don't have any of those. But this is very straightforward, even though I didn't bring this. Oh, here, I like to pass things around. Big fan of passing things around. This is polystyrene covered with, and this is a poor job, so don't look at this in terms of quality. Covered with aluminum tape. It gives you great effects. If you've seen the sword in my office, anybody seen the sword in my office? No? Nobody? Have you seen it?
I think I've seen it.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Done with cedar siding and aluminum tape. Total cost like $1.20. Because I got the cedar siding for free. And the tape is like $3 for a small roll. So anyway, I mean, I guess you all know how to cut, but these cutters these styrene cutters are nice. But all you need is an X-Acto knife. And I guess what I wanted to highlight, is this is like cutting glass. If you score it, it will snap. So you don't have to do anything heavy duty and it'll snap. Okay, it's really easy. So you don't have to sit there and hog away at the stuff, okay? So we'll all be able to do that.
How does it snap on a compound curve?
Well, it will, but you have to work it. So if you're dealing with a compound curve, you really want an X-Acto knife. And you just have to sort, you might have to do it a couple times, and then work it around the compound curve. Good question. However, there's also a way, I didn't bring, oh yeah. Now, a year ago, I think, I've been carrying a pocket knife like all my life. And a year ago, I went to a smaller Swiss Army knife, which was kind of dramatic. So I forgot to bring a knife with me. So, let's see, I want to use something else. Okay. But anyway, this cuts with scissors, and so it's really approachable. Okay. And kind of like we did with the foam core, you can take several pieces and cut them out just with scissors. It's really nice. You get the thin pieces, and then you hit it with a sander, and kind of like what we did with the foam core as well, so you can get symmetry. Okay. And then another thing, this is a similar type of project. So this is a hammered metal effect, and again, the paint effect maybe isn't so great on this, but you can just kind of see what you can do. And this is Super Sculpey and spackle, like you spackle a wall. So you just. The nice thing about making is you make whatever you want. You're not constrained by almost anything. So I wanted a handle like that, and there I have a handle like that. And it's obviously not finished, but it's using the same technique. So anyway, that's cutting. And again, it mentions there's sculptural, I've got like an outline I want to go through. Structural shapes you can work with. I want to do heat. I guess I do heat. And okay, that's how the old guys made lightning, right? Thunder sound. Okay, so this is not terribly exciting, but to heat it, you heat it up and bend it. And what you'll see though is it's not so well controlled. And normally you want something, you want to clamp it, but it still gets a little bit wonky. So I'll just do this real quick. And you'll see this will kind of wrinkle up. Actually, let me, I can go over here. So you can look here. This isn't dangerous. I don't think this is.
I can hold it on this side.
Yeah, why don't you do that? I normally clamp it. Yeah, we can do that. Okay. And you're the one that got your hair cut, right? So you'll see it'll start to wrinkle up. Then you can bend it. So it's just a fast way. If I didn't use heat, it would snap. You see something? Okay, let's just see if that's enough heat. Now we'll hold it, and
And then meshes to the tape.
Tell you want to just hold that in? Just grab it this way. This big human clamp. Thank you. Okay, and that will cool, and it will hold its shape. So it's a really easy way to make a strong edge, like I showed you on this deflection device here. And it is really strong. Okay. Any questions? Oh, and then this, the way you finish this, and whatever you think, it might spring back a little bit. You can let it go whatever you feel. It's cool. Generally, in the world of styrene, you're dealing with emery cloth, 600 grit sandpaper, especially from maybe 400, 600, 800 for your sanding work, and then some of these small files, like triangular files, and and there's. So that's kind of the tools of trade. So you don't really need too much to get going, an exact on that. So what I thought, unless Jeremiah has any objections, we're small enough, we could cut some stuff. So like for example, when I cut these, I literally just, well you can see some that came out here, and you just kind of do what your heart says. Now we've got, what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 people. So we can use a bandsaw and a scroll saw. And I thought it'd be fun just to make a blade, or if you want to be non-mercenary, you can make this device here, whatever it is. I want to do something besides a blade.
It's a flosser.
Yes, like a giant flosser. That's right. Yeah, exactly. So I just thought, well, that's an interesting shape, and we could make that. So anyway, that's the world of polystyrene. I think most of you have dealt with it before. I'll mention too, before I guess we just kind of do our own experimental work, is you get these burrs kicked up when you. Oh, there is that.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you pass that around? Now we could have done that. It's very easy to do it with a thicker styrene like I did here. This doesn't take much heat. It does burn, so you use a torch. You have to hold it way back. I've never done it with a torch.
Does it shatter when it's frozen?
I've never tried that. I don't know how brittle it is. I don't know. Good question. But some other techniques, just in terms of model making, is when you're trying to get detail, you can carve into this. So you can do a lot of stuff. It holds edges very, very well. And that's its strength compared to Wonderflex, this kind of softer material, the foam core, or even wood. And you may be familiar, we've got some medium density fiberboard back there, which is kind of in wrench shape, which are some of the go-to things for doing weird shapes. But this is, is hard to beat for detail work. But I'll mention what some people will do is they'll put, oh, and I didn't bring that either. They'll put brass pieces to give you a lot of detail. So brass and other such
Soft metal
materials, yeah, you can get really intricate because you can cast those, and so you can get things that you wouldn't be able to carve normally. So you can adhere them to this, so when you paint them, they disappear. So you see that in a lot of kits. So if you're doing like intake louvers for a tank or something like that, often it'll be a brass grid and glue because it gets that refined and much better than polystyrene. So that happens. And then two, there's underpainting, which is what I was trying to explore here. Those of you who worked in the world of painting, fine art painting, you know about underpaintings generally. And if you work with acrylics, you can underpaint something and then overpaint it, hit it with sandpaper, maybe you've done this, Jeremiah, and then expose that underpainting, and you get some really interesting effects. And I was sort of experimenting with that here. That's what this sanding mark is. So you can get some interesting effects. And again, when you, some of these are real failures, but you can get some interesting effects that way, especially if you're trying to show rust. You can use salt, you can use hairspray, which will separate the paint from the styrene and give you this sort of rusted one. The only other thing I can think of as far as an old and fun type of model building trick is to take a nail, which this is not a nail, and you heat it, and you can push it through the styrene. It'll look like a bullet hole. It'll have a flare out. So that you'll hit the nail with a torch and then push it through if you want to make nail holes. So that's kind of the quick and dirty thing too, to make interesting effects. So, okay. So you put just a smidgen on here. You really don't need much. Just a little bit of cloth. And don't do the medicine chest, just do the styrene I gave you. And if you, I'm going to rub along the edge, actually. And just kind of have fun with it. I mean, you can do it the same way. And you want to penetrate out once in a while. Get the edges a little more. Sorry. You kind of want to pull it out so it's a little bit erratic. And then you don't want it to be smooth like paint. You want it to kind of pull it in. Corner a bit more. And over here. This is really cool, weathered look. And we'll do this ourselves. And I guess in terms of tricks here, you do want to get the entire corner generally, and you want to like flare off into the metal in random places, so it doesn't look like you're painting it. And you can buff that later when it dries. Okay, so and you can do this. So if we come on over here, you can actually do it on the black looks kind of good. So, like for example, this one, if you're looking at leather, this is too, you see how it's kind of straight across. You want to kind of break it up. So here, that, and then here's.